Yeah, this talk is introducing the principles of lean portfolio management for business agility. So at ICAgile, I mentioned earlier on, we are a certification and accreditation body, and we publish learning outcomes. The way we do that is we get industry experts, practitioners who are doing the stuff, and people who know about the various topics, and we persuade them, bring them in, and they produce sets of learning outcomes which we then make freely available to the world under a Creative Commons license that basically this is what good looks like for this discipline, this area. These are the competencies and knowledge that people need to have. And we found that when we brought a group of experts together to start talking about lean portfolio management, that there were a whole lot of thinking and good ideas in there, but there was not a definitive set of principles. So as part of this thought leadership and bringing these ideas together, ICAgile facilitated producing a set of definitive principles for lean portfolio management. And that's a lot of what this talk is going to be about. So the structure, the flow for our session is I'm going to quickly define what we see as lean portfolio management. Then we will talk through the principles. And then I'll give one example of where I have seen this made real. We'll talk about some anti-patterns, some common mistakes that are out there. And then we'll wrap things up. And along the way, depending on how time goes, we're going to have some opportunities for conversations and discussions. So coming straight into it, what is lean portfolio about? It enables rapid learning, adaptation, and responsive change in organizations. This is, I would say, the why of lean portfolio. But the what, and here is the definition that we came up with, it provides a mechanism for organizations to fund and manage the flow of initiatives and activities across the whole enterprise, maximizing value delivered to customers and other stakeholders. This facilitates an alignment of work to the organization's overall strategy and enables prioritization of the most important work while limiting work in progress and respecting the team's capacity to deliver. That draws on lean thinking, systems thinking, agile development, and business agility to achieve business goals and rapidly adapt to changing circumstances. So that's the two-sentence definition that we have come up with for what lean portfolio is today. But the what is useful. What does this actually mean to us? And that's where we came up with this set of 9 principles. And I'm going to go through these principles, and then we'll stop. We'll pause and have a quick conversation. These principles are also published in a white paper, which is referenced in the slide deck, and I will make the slide deck available to you afterwards. So our first principle is the shift to customer centricity within a larger context. And the image that we've chosen here is the Business Agility Institute domains of business agility with that customer sitting in the middle. The underlying driver of adaptive work is the fundamental shift that organizations need to make towards customer centricity, to empathize with and serve the customer in a larger social and environmental context. Everyone in the organization needs a clear line of sight to the customer, the organization's vision, and this larger context. So it's customer centricity, but not customer fanaticism. And we do bring in very, very importantly that social and environmental context and the organization's vision. The second principle, communicate an adaptive strategy with transparency. Organizations need a strategy that supports this vision or true north to effectively respond to change. The true north is where we're going. But how we're going to get there, we don't know. We recognize that this path forward is fundamentally unseeable. So feedback, learning, and adaptation become core competencies for success in today's business environment. Adaptive strategy embodies the flexible approach and response to changing environments, and an effective adaptive strategy is articulated and communicated across the whole organization to enable local decision-making that aligns with and is constrained by the organization's goal. Strategy is more stable than the approach to achieving it, but even our strategy is fundamentally adaptive because the world around us is so responsive and changing all the time. Align around common goals and how they might change. This true north that guides organizational strategy has got to be conveyed in a set of clear business outcomes looking across different time horizons. These goals are expressed and communicated in clear, measurable terms to make the strategy itself implementable. Every area of the organization understands where and how to contribute to the overall mosaic that delivers on business outcomes. Feedback loops ensure that goals and outcomes adapt to meet the evolving needs of the organization, and these changes are communicated transparently, clearly, and rapidly. Fourth principle, define, prioritize, and deliver business value frequently. Business value needs to be articulated in clear language using agreed upon metrics to make work prioritization clear and straightforward, all the way across, whatever the structure and the hierarchy is. Depending on that scope of control, work is delivered in the smallest increments as possible, as frequently as possible, to enable rapid feedback, learning, and adaptation. The entire organization is attuned to feedback, listening for both the weak signals and the louder messages. Feedback mechanisms are built into every aspect of delivery and are used to learn and adapt in iterative cycles. Our fifth principle, and this is the shameless self-promotion, this is the book, #No Projects by Evan Lamord and myself. Structure in value streams. Traditional silo-based organization structures impede the flow of value through handoffs and dependencies. LPM is only truly effective when the people responsible for delivering value have end-to-end control of all steps in the value chain. This requires rethinking the borders and structures of organizations around identifying and delivering value rather than the specializations of skills and competencies. Cross-functional, collaborative, stable teams are responsible for achieving business outcomes, and they have the skills and knowledge to do so. These teams benefit the organization by improving coordination, simplifying communication, and sharing expertise to solve problems. Take about accountability for outcomes over outputs. Value streams enable teams to take ownership and accountability for delivering value to their customers, supporting these organizational outcomes. Outcomes are achieved when work is done that provide values to customers and other stakeholders in the value chain. Value teams are tasked with achieving outcomes and empowered to figure out the best way to achieve them within realistic constraints. Outcomes are the primary focus. Outputs are measured steps towards achieving them. Number 7, optimize flow and reduce waste across the whole system. Systems thinking is a core competency for effective lean portfolio management. It's this big picture understanding of how different value streams converge to achieving organizational goals and identifying and minimizing dependencies across value streams to enable prioritization and adaptation. Waste should be reduced or eliminated anywhere it occurs in the system. Adaptivity to changing needs and shifts in context requires this ability to look across the whole portfolio and shift investments if necessary. This adaptation can happen at any level in the organization, from the backlog for a single product to the value streams needed to achieve the organization's goals. Shorting planning and funding cycles. Effective lean portfolio management requires far shorter funding and planning cycles, moving away from annual planning and long-term funding to quarterly or more frequent planning. Keep the bank open rather than allocating funds once a year to allow responsive funding for new opportunities and goals as they emerge. Fund value streams rather than projects and shift from permission-based governance to empowered decision-making with frequent feedback and value-delivered reporting. Funding enables innovation when organizations shift from pure cost-based budgeting to value-based and begin measuring progress towards outcomes. The question of what will it cost and what value will we get is central to this shift. And number 9, balance capacity and demand. Limit work in progress at every level in the portfolio. The whole organization has a finite limit on how much can be delivered and how much funding is available in a time frame. This same limitation applies to every value stream. Don't overload the system with top-down push of work. Implement a pull-based flow where teams pull from a prioritized funnel of work. Ruthless prioritization ensures that the highest value work is done first. Take an economic viewpoint, maximize value while managing cost. And we have an infographic of the 9 foundational principles of lean portfolio management. And I see that that's been put into the chat window, the link to the white paper. So thank you. Let's just talk about a little bit about making it real. So I said I would talk to one example, and this comes from an organization named New Zealand Post, which is our post office here in New Zealand. They also own a bank. Just because post office have to own bank. Right?
Just one chain, one post office, one bank. I know it's a small country, but I didn't think it's that small.
We have one post office, yeah.
Okay.
And it's a state-owned, government-owned enterprise, the post office. We have a number of banks, 5 major, 5 to 7 banks. We're only 4.5 million people. And most of our banks are owned out of Australia, but this one is locally owned. And I will say I am one of their customers, Kiwi Bank. So the images here are from a room, an Oboya room that was on the top floor of the NZ Post building on the waterfront in Wellington. Unfortunately, that building was severely damaged in an earthquake, so I'm not sure where the room is now. And the building was made uninhabitable through a significant earthquake, and they're busy rebuilding it or earthquake strengthening it. But Paul Reed was the chief executive there, and he brought this practice in. And there were a few rules about this room. First of all, the executive leadership team met in this room at least once a week. And up on the top left, they were only allowed to talk about 2 topics in any session. So the first topic and the second topic, and that was limiting WIP right the way through. And the image on that way forward is meant to represent the health of the organization, and the different color, the stripes mean different areas of the business and so forth. Around the walls, you have the a number of Kanban boards looking at, and each post-it there is an initiative that is underway. One part of it is the planning and looking forward. The swim lanes are different business areas, and then over on the bottom left is turning that into more of a traditional Kanban board, with looking at the portfolio. So the one was planning, the other one is backlog in progress and so forth, under action. And then the fourth image down on the bottom right, you will notice on the back of the door there is a picture of an elephant. Part of the protocol for any meeting held in this room, and this room was open for anyone to come in at any point and use to have conversations about work that's going on. So it wasn't limited to the executive team, it was open. Anyone in the organization was allowed and welcome to come in. And if you wanted to have a conversation where you were looking at something strategic in your area of the business, you could use this space, and the rules, the protocols applied. No more than 2 topics in any meeting, and the elephant. So the protocol for the elephant in the room was, if any member of the group that was having the conversation felt that there was an important topic that we were not addressing, that there was an elephant in the room that was being ignored, the requirement was to write it on a post-it note, stick it on the door, and we would not leave the room until the elephant topics have been discussed. This required a culture of safety, transparency, and openness. And they led this by example. Paul and his executive team really did show this in action. It wasn't just lip service. And Kiwi Bank in particular has become one of New Zealand's most successful banks in the face of competition from far, far larger organizations. And I put it down to that culture. And this was an example of, and it's and the work I did with them, I saw a lot of these principles in play at the time. What are some of the mistakes we've seen? Well, the anti-patterns, and we all make mistakes, but here are some that we can call out and say, hey, be careful of this. One of the biggest and I'm sad to say most common things we see is organizations adopting OKRs, or objectives and key results, but then trying to use them as a performance management framework, not getting the culture shift again that OKRs really desire. Another one that really hurts is not shifting to value streams, but trying to overlay LPM on a hierarchical organization is going to be incredibly painful. The annual budgeting as a bottleneck, yeah, keep the bank open. Trying to adopt exactly what another organization has done without adapting it to your context. You know, dare we mention Spotify in this context? Please no. Not taking the time to really understand and learn what your value streams need to be. And this requires some experimentation. It requires looking at who are your customers really? What are where does value truly come from? And there's learning that needs to happen. This can result in, you know, reorganization too soon and too frequently. Constant shifting of people with no clear understanding of capacity, the resource-based thinking that is still so common. Hidden work and secret agendas, the portfolio objectives overridden by local work, lip service with no transparency around the real blockers and impediments, gaps in strategic vision. Start with that clarity of vision and communicate that down. If you haven't got that, figure it out first, because otherwise you don't know where you're going. He goes furthest who knows not whither he goest. I believe that was Shakespeare. Very common, the confusion between outcomes and outputs. Identify the real outcomes and not the outputs. And think about that investment mix across the run, grow, transform. Keep it appropriately balanced. The journey to business agility is a grind driven by an identity, and it requires persistent effort over a long period of time and a growth mindset. And there are no shortcuts. This stuff is hard. And we need to accept that and support our organizations as they make these changes. So just a reminder, the white paper is there and the learning outcomes, and I see both of those have been put into the chat, and I will make the slide deck available to you afterwards. I also see the PMO to VMO book coming into the chat. And just our North Star as ICAgile. Why do we do this stuff? Our vision is that organizations around the world enable and inspire everyone in them to create a better future for those around them. Our belief is that organizations' journey towards business agility requires shift to an empowered, human-centric culture that sparks creativity and innovation. Learning has the power to transform people and, by extension, establish this culture that enables people to create a better future for their customers, employees, partners, and more, that bigger context. So that's the why, that's the North Star for ICAgile and everything that we do. So I think we're almost out of time, but let's throw that up there. Yeah, look for me on LinkedIn. And I did see that somebody posted the link to the book, so thank you so much.